Morning, everyone, and welcome to June's IGB Audit Risk and Scrutiny Committee. Elaine, do we have any apologies?
Yeah, I've got apologies from Alan McNiven and Fiona Ralph.
Perfect. Okay, and then do we have any declarations of interest or transparency statements? Not seeing anyone. Okay, so we'll move on to the first item, which is the minutes. Are we happy to agree the minutes? Saying nods. Yes. Happy to agree. Okay, so we move on to the unaudited annual governance statement, and this is for approval. Sarah.
Yeah, so I won't read through it in detail because I'll just assume that members have read it. It is slightly different to what's been presented in previous years because it reflects the new guidance issued for governance statements. And I did say this in the pre-agenda, I think it's really helpful because it really is very clear about the various different controls we have, the procedures in place, the guidance, and everything that sits behind the governance statement itself. So for me, I think it's a really, really helpful document because it really spells it out for everybody. It has been through internal audit review, and Karen's obviously signed that off. So it's here for approval to be included in the annual accounts, the draft annual accounts. So happy to take any questions anybody would have on it.
Thanks, Sarah. Do we have any comments or questions? Kath.
Thanks, Chair. And apologies, I'm putting my hand up because I've got a split screen. So in order to find the raise hand button, I have to close the paper that I'm looking at. It was just on page 26 when we're talking about the finalising of the integration scheme, and that's a pan NHS-GGC. I just wonder if there's any update on when that might likely happen.
No, not at the moment, Kath. It's still going through the various different groups and discussions, both with the board and a group set up to look at hosted services. So no, not as yet.
Sarah.
Thanks, Kath and Sarah. And I'm not seeing any other questions. I don't have any questions per se, but Sarah, just a note to thank yourself, the team, and of course Karen's team as well, who work with you for the work, because as always, we get very well written, and I really like the kind of new approach. I think it's helpful, and we always get these really well written papers, and there's a lot of work that goes on behind them. So thank your team for that.
Thanks very much.
It's a lot of work, and we recognise that. Okay, so if we have no other questions, we're happy to approve. Perfect. Okay, and then we move on to the Internal Audit Plan 25-26 and 26-27 progress. Karen.
Okay. This is just my usual report giving you details of the Internal Audit Plan progress within the IGB. The 25-26 plan is now complete. The first audit engagement of the new plan is planned to be taken start in August, and it's still to be scoped out yet. And the first development session will be at the end of this meeting on cybersecurity. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions or comments? I'm not seeing any. So are we happy to note, Karen, just as always, appreciate the update and understanding where we are in terms of what we need to be doing. And I have to say, I really welcome the training. I think it's incredibly helpful. We have all got different experiences, and I think that being trained up and understanding the key issues is really important in terms of our knowledge as a board. So are we happy to note? Okay, perfect. Okay, and then we move on to the summary of internal audit reports, and that's you again, Karen.
This report gives you details of assignment that's been completed within the IGB, and it was on the preparation of the strategic plan and the process that's followed for preparing the plan. There was a couple of issues identified, but to be fair to management, they were aware of them. It was in relation to defining localities and also making sure that the consultation plan was a separate document. And I know that they are working on the localities with the main partners, the council and any other community planning partners at the moment. And mainly the other issues were really just about being more formal in the way the information was presented. But I know, again, that's been taken on board. I'm happy
Thanks,
to take any further questions.
Thanks, Karen. Any questions or comments? Kath? Oh, you're on mute, Kath.
There we go. Thanks, Karen. Excellent paper. Thank you. I just wanted to know on pages 43 and 44, the role of the People and Staff Governance Committee now in NHSGGC. So on page 44, if that could be updated, it's the 4th bullet. It says Area Partnership Forum, and that should now say and People and Staff Governance Committee annually. And that was from the 1st of April 2026. Thank you.
Are we happy to just make that amendment, Karen?
Sorry, Kath, what page did you say it was on?
It's on page 44 of the PDF pack, Karen.
Okay,
Fourth,
I think that's the
bullet
next
point
paper,
down.
but yeah, we'll change it.
Oh, sorry, I jumped ahead of myself.
It's okay.
That happens,
that-
Kath. You're not the only one to do
There
that.
you go.
Every time we have a full council meeting, somebody asks the question about the next paper, so you're well
Just
in with
too
everybody
keen,
else.
Karen. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands, so happy to note. Yep. Okay, and then we move on to the summary of internal audit activity and partner organisations. Karen, and I think we'll note Kath's point.
Thank you.
Again, the purpose of this report is to make members aware of the internal audit assignments that's been undertaken in the two main partners, the Council and Greater Glasgow and Clyde. 2 reports have been issued within the Council and 4 within Greater Glasgow and Clyde. And obviously, in relation to the Health Board's reports, I will only have limited information because they're undertaken by ASETs as their own internal auditors. But I do know that both audit sections have follow-up processes in place, and that the audits within the Health Board are over the complete Health Board and not just our part of it. Just to make members aware of that. And there is follow-up to make sure that the recommendations have been implemented satisfactorily. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Karen. And I think that clarification around the fact that things are across the whole Health Board is important, because we've very much got our Renfrewshire hats on, and things can happen in specific localities, so they may not directly relate to us, but it's good to understand. Do we have any questions or comments? Karen, you're writing papers too well and making it too easy for us. That's great, thank you. So we're happy to note. And then we move on to the internal audit annual report 25-26, and that's you again, Karen.
Okay. This is a report which gives you a summary of all the work that's been undertaken within the IGB and also the two main partners during 25-26. It also gives you details of my own team's performance and any improvement activity we're taking forward. The most important part really is section 6 on page 56, where it gives you my opinion on the adequacy of the IGB's internal control, risk management and governance system, and that feeds into Sarah's paper in item 2, the governance statement. And I'm happy to say that we were able to provide reasonable assurance over the systems and this information. So I'm happy to take any questions again.
Thanks, Karen. Do we have any questions or comments? We don't. Okay, so are we happy to note? Okay, so then we move on to the local code and sources of assurance for governance arrangement. James.
It's myself. I'll pick that up.
Okay,
James did all the work, I must say, to give him the credit.
So I just picked the person whose name's at the end.
So the local code, as many of you are aware from previous updates, is a standing document that sets out the principles and sources of assurance that form part of the IGB's corporate governance arrangements. By its nature, the content of this code remains broadly consistent
Thanks, Frances. That was a good summary. Do we have any comments or questions? I'm not seeing any. Thank you for the report again. This is one of the reports, I think, where you see the breadth of work that goes on to ensure really strong governance. And I think being in the position where substantial assurance is really, it's excellent. You know, we are delivering diverse and complex services, and there's a lot of work that goes on behind that. So again, appreciate the work of the staff who are ensuring that this is all in place. And you can take that back to them, James and Frances. It's a lot of work. Okay, then we move on to the update on the risk register. David.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa Marie. So this paper follows on from the approach that we used at the last meeting to pull out the key themes from the risks and issues in the register, with a focus around financial sustainability, workforce and transformation capacity, emerging pressures and governance and strategic risks as well. There's not been any changes to the scores or the status of the existing risks and issues in the register, and we continue to actively manage those. In relation to this 23, which we added at the last meeting around the extension of voting rights, that risk in particular continues, I think, exists within quite a dynamic landscape, and there's lots of kind of changes around that continue to happen. We have received some draft information through from the Scottish Government that we're considering at the moment. But I think what I would say is that leaves a lot of questions still to be answered around the overarching process of the extension of voting rights. And I think it will leave quite a lot to local areas to decide on local arrangements rather than giving absolute firm guidance on what needs to be done nationally. What we do think, though, is that we should be able to extend voting rights to existing members for the September meeting, and beyond that, look at the training and support and processes that need to be put in place beyond that. And we're also working with colleagues in legal services to look at the implications for standing orders in the integration scheme as well. And in relation to that last point, and we've touched on it already this morning around the integration scheme and the wider work across the board to clarify hosting arrangements, we have added another risk to the register around the integration scheme to reflect that ongoing work, and also the expected changes we'll need to make to the scheme around the extension of voting rights. And until that integration scheme is updated and agreed by the partners, then there is that risk that governance arrangements that we have in place are divergent from the document that we have agreed as the integration scheme as well. So that was all I was going to kind of pull out on this paper this morning.
Thanks, David. Appreciated. Kath.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, David. I particularly appreciated at 4.3 where you give us an explanation of why that risk has been added around the integration scheme. And I think you're pointing to the really relevant issues, and you can read them there: governance arrangements, national legislation, need to ensure ongoing alignment between governance practices and formal documentation. And then also, I also appreciated the thematic analysis that arose from 4.8. I think that's really helpful to have that spelt out in those thematic headings. And also the sustained focus, the need for the sustained focus on transformation, financial recovery planning and workforce stabilisation will be critical to enabling longer term risk reduction. So I found that really helpful explanations within the paper of where we find ourselves, why the risks have been assessed as they are, and what are the potential mitigating factors to some of this. So thank you. No question, just those comments.
Thanks, Kath.
Thanks, Kath. I mean, I would reflect that, as you know, there's been a lot of work done on the risk register over the past number of years in terms of the robustness and the maturity of it, and I think it's really showing now in terms of the detail we have and that extra assurance we have around the work that's going on. So really appreciate that comment. Jamie.
Thank you. I don't have a question or comment even on the money bit of it, you know, those first two, 25, glaring red, blowing off the page, but I think like they just continue to tell the story of how working at the HCSSA, trying to deliver services is just a constant living on your nerves the whole time thing. And I think the Accounts Commission bulletin coming out and being like, yes, and I in some ways, sometimes I think, well, nothing can be done about the risk, just as many people looking at it and going, wow, what a risk, can feel a bit better, if not like fix the risk. So I'm just naming that. And then obviously the thing is, I guess I think in some ways it's like I've lost the idea that any vote on sustainable futures is the answer to that. It might pull it down the odd point or whatever, but it's one part of the answer to it. And I feel really aware of that now, considering these risks, which is it is one part of a story that is not just ours, that is held across Scotland. But I think I just want to name for officers that month to month to month, that is like no way to live, but here you are living it. The extension of voting rights thing, I want to pose a question, but I'm going to give away my thoughts as I pose the question. Is there any chance that we have just admired this problem for too long? Because it's now, we'll watch it and see, we'll find out what happens, we don't know what's going to happen. Is there any, because I don't see it in the mitigations, like, and maybe it's too low level, but this time, like, whatever happens, we've got this package of training that we're going to sweep in with the minute we know that somebody's going to come anywhere near us to make sure that that's there. Maybe that is already there. Maybe that's so low level that it doesn't need to be named. But there's something about, if we're waiting to see what happens with something for 6 months, I think we're kind of choosing passivity there a wee bit, would be my view, as opposed to going, right, this thing's happening, nobody seems to have a clue, there's a black hole, here's our best attempt to try and fill that black hole. I would be interesting to hear a bit more thoughts on that, because I gather from what I heard at the end there is that one well-meaning thing could actually trample on 5 other things and causes more problems later on. So maybe that is the problem, and that is, but it feels a bit like, there's a bit of inertia around this just now. We know that it's coming, but continue to go, we don't really know what it means, we don't know. How do we get to a point where we can grab it and go, we think this is what it means for us, and this is what we're going to do about that? Or is that daft?
I mean, I think that's a good question, Jamie. I don't know who can answer it. I think in terms of sort of the training and things, I do think there's an element where, do you just train people up because you know what's coming? And some of them have had a level of the training we've had anyway, but it's how do you make sure, how do we do what we can do, but until we know the unknown, I suppose. Billy, I'll bring you in and then Neil.
Yeah, thanks. And Jamie, I think that's a fair challenge, and I think a welcome challenge. Certainly as a team, we've been meeting to discuss exactly that. There is a sense of, I think, urgency for us, but also a lack of clarity in terms of some of the national guidance. There were some helpful FAQs that came through this week, in fact, that do help to give us a bit of space to think about this and to do it in a phased way. And I think that's what we've agreed to do as a team, is take a more phased approach. I'll probably leave it there, because I think Nen probably gave us the best advice, and I think that's what gave us that level of comfort of actually saying, I don't think it's that we're doing nothing. I think we're just taking a phased approach to this. So there will be some element of support over the summer in preparation for that first meeting in September. But it is then at that point sort of continually being in continual dialogue with those members and checking what it is that they require, but also checking in with the IJB as a whole and just checking how does that look and feel. But Nen, you might want to say more in terms of that sort of legal advice that you certainly gave when we met last week.
Yes, as Billy's indicated, we have, it's not that there's been nothing happening on this, but the difficulty is that we are awaiting finalised guidance from the Scottish Government, which really has the potential, if you like, to affect the way that we would address some of these issues. So the kind of the fundamental change to the voting rights is something that really happens, if you like, automatically, and our standing orders, although they won't exactly reflect that in the way that they're drafted, are explicitly subordinate themselves, if you like, to the legislative position. That would be the case whether they said that or not. But you know that they do explicitly recognise the possibility of legislative change having that impact, and say, you know, if there's a difference, then the regulations will take priority. That then really follows through the document relatively straightforwardly, and in most cases, the only questions it raises is whether or not we have, if you like, policy decisions to make around about how the business of the IJB is going to be transacted going forward with the new voting members in place. The governance issues, if you like, around about training and standards and things like that, and recognising that new voting members might not be as conversant with those kind of responsibilities as other people who have been appointed from public bodies where they're already subject to kind of codes of standards and conduct and things like that. These are kind of, if you like, kind of softer areas of this, and I think the standing orders as they're drafted cover it in the sense that they're subject to code of conduct, and that's that. But what we don't have is any kind of indication what's going to be said in guidance from the Scottish Government around about what the expectation the Scottish Government has, and if you like, is directing through guidance for IJBs in terms of their training of these members. The draft that we've seen, I don't think I want really to go into detail because we've been told it's just a draft, but the draft that it's seen suggests that the Scottish Government will be expecting something rather more than is set out explicitly in any regulation anywhere. So it is difficult for us at this point to formulate any kind of hard plan as to what a training package, for example, would look like when we're still waiting for certainty around about what direction we're going to get from central government. And at the very least, even though we might not have to follow the guidance that's produced, we at least need to be clear in our own minds why we're not following it. So in order to do that, we need to know what it says, and unfortunately we're not at that point yet. So that's the difficulty. That's what's causing, if you like, any kind of perceived delay in us addressing this. But I suppose the assurance that I would give is that we have looked at the standing orders, we've looked at the terms of the integration scheme. We're satisfied that as of 1st September, we're going to be in a position to go ahead and proceed. It's you know, changes will need to be made, but it's not the kind of thing that's going to leave us unable to actually transact business and to do it legally and with proper governance.
Jamie, do you want to come back? I've got a question now.
No, I'm okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Neil, that's interesting, and I think a level of reassurance there that whatever we've got through in terms of the guidance and the legislation, it will allow us to go ahead, although there will be then I assume be some redrafting for you of our paperwork guidance, that sort of thing, to make sure that it is in line with the legislation. But appreciate that the legislation supersedes everything, so we just follow that until we've got that done effectively. I do think that and Jamie Sheffield and I do think the training piece in terms of members, they're coming on board in September, so we need to ensure that they're supported in that way. And you know, actually our members, I think, all have a level of experience of these sorts of forums, different levels of experience that they have them. So I think there is a background there before we start. But I do think just things around processes and things like that, and what your responsibilities are, it's really important that they understand that. So there's a level where I'm in line with Jamie, and it may be that we've looked at this in terms of training and things already. I do think we maybe need to do kind of when I was started as a councillor and also started here, I got a bit of a, this is the code of conduct, this is what you stick to, this is how meetings work, etc., training. And I do think that's possibly helpful in terms of the new responsibility. And I'll leave it with the team because it's not my job to say when you should do that. But I think doing some of that before September would probably be helpful. But we're getting into operational stuff and I don't want to require specific things too much. Frances, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I suppose I just wanted to quickly provide further reassurance to yourself and like in the back of what Nairn said, that we're not starting from zero here. We already have strong relationships and work hard to try and support the existing members in their current role. I meet regularly with the third sector rep, and one of our officers already meets with the carers rep and the service user rep to go through all the IGB papers, and we've had a series of conversations. Both myself and our public affairs manager John have had a number of conversations with the reps about this, and we've put some practical support in place, like the email addresses, generic email addresses. We're looking at supporting them around the networks that they, to strengthen those networks that they have so that they can represent a range of views. So there's work already underway and meetings in place around that. And also a number of those reps are getting updates about codes of conduct and different things like that from Carers Coalition, the Alliance as well. So they are starting to have conversations about this. So it is a live discussion.
Thanks, Frances. I think that's helpful. So, Jamie?
They all sound like really useful mitigating actions that would be wonderful to see in the thing that says, here's all the mitigations that we're doing. So it might just be that you think that's in there, but that the writing is perhaps slightly too high level to try and elicit any of that information from monitor national guidance development or review Scottish Government guidance. Is really high level, and maybe just given the level of interest, the level of impact, the level of care that we're putting into this, it might require just a wee bit more eking out, like maybe not going forward because it's going to happen by the time the next meeting happens anyway, but there's something about that's all very good to hear, I think, and I wouldn't have had to have asked that question if I had been able to pull some of that out of what's in there as mitigation, because that all sounds like really important mitigation.
I agree, Jamie, and I think an action for this is that we just amend that slightly to reflect all the work the team are doing. Because you're right, by the time we get to the next meeting, we'll be in the piece. But it's important that we reflect the work that's been done until now. So I think what Jamie's saying is you slightly haven't given yourself enough credit for the work you're doing. So let's make sure it's just detailed in there. And if you can make that change and even just send it to me and Kath, we can approve it in terms of going forward. But yeah, I think it's always tricky for staff to be concise, but also put enough in. So yeah, if we can just do a wee update, and Frances and Neil, if you can work out how you do that, just to summarise some of that work. Billy?
Yeah, I suppose it's just also to recognise that it is moving. So that the conversation we met, I think, on Friday, and then I think since then we've had the FAQs that have come out from the centre. So this is something that's moved. The conversation is moving on, if you like, every few days. It's not something that's moving even every few weeks. So I agree. I think if we can update that, but recognising that probably as soon as it's written down, it's already out of date. It's one of those. So I think keeping a close eye on that and updating it on a regular basis will be important.
Yeah, thanks, appreciated. So are we happy to approve with the agreement that we just add a little bit more information in there around all the work the team are doing? Yeah, okay, excellent. Then we move on to the Health and Social Care Partnership Risk Appetite Summary Report, and that's you again, David.
Yeah, thank you. So this paper brings forward a draft risk appetite statement to reflect recent work that has been done with IGB members to review and update the IGB's previous risk appetite statement. So this is the first time it's presented as a standalone document, and that's provided in Appendix 1. And it also gives a comparison with the IGB's previous risk appetite statements, showing that whilst the overall appetite for the IGB remains at cautious, there has been movement in a number of categories where appetite on those individual basis has increased. And I think that's reflective of recent papers that have been considered by the IGB around the financial position, around the work that we're doing on transformation. And it does show the appetite that I think we've touched on already this morning for service transformation, whilst also reflecting that really difficult financial context and the need to ensure that whilst we're doing that work, we also have robust arrangements in place to manage risk and ensure service quality and safety is maintained as well. So the statement also sets out how risk appetite will be reflected in decision-making papers that go to full IGB meetings within the implications of this report section of those papers. And we'll do that for the first time at this month's IGB meeting, subject to today's discussion. We'll also review the statement approximately annually. Next year, it may be a little bit more than a year between the development and the review of it, as we want to align that with the wider review of the risk management framework. And that itself we want to review alongside the development of the strategic plan, which is scheduled for September 2027. So we want to make sure that all those strategies and plans interact with one another and are reflective of one another when we update them. So hopefully that makes sense for members.
Thanks, David. That's helpful and a good report. And I have to say, personally, it was interesting going through this because I think recognising the difference between your kind of personal risk appetite and your professional risk appetite is it's an interesting place to be in terms of self-reflection. Jacqueline.
Thanks, Chair. As I explained earlier, I'm going to keep my camera off. I hope you don't mind. I'm just a voice in the wilderness. But I'm going to repeat something that I've said before. And I think last time, David, I was saying that the fact that you've put in section 4 that it's not an exact science or an absolute guide is really helpful for me, because I always have a bit of a nervousness about how accurate I am with my own risk appetite. And I think the fact as well that it's combined, as Lisa Marie said, personal, but also as an IGB, as a joint board, that's helpful, that interpretation, because it changes as well, obviously, you know, from dependent on circumstances. So I found that really reassuring and helpful. So thank you for that section of the report and the report in general. Thanks.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Kath.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, kind of building on what you're saying, Jacqueline. I found the table in section 3, David, where you give us the comparison and you give us the updated appetite scores. But I also wanted to emphasise that this came out of a development session where there was discussion. So yes, members did it individually, but we had extensive conversations about this. So that not exact science, no apologies for that. It is that human factor. And just as you say, Jacqueline, you know, the imperfection of that and the need to continually return to it as world events change, as local events change. And I'm not suggesting, David, that we do it more than once a year, but the bringing it into the IJB space is really crucial. So that if we were ever to see that that was veering off, that there'd be course correction around that. And so I think this is a really, really important area in the current climate and the decision making that's going on. But that the data that isn't necessarily present in the numbers and the tables, and making sure that we're cognizant of that and remembering that is really, really important. Thank you.
I think that's a good point, well made, Kath. And I also just, I would reflect again what David said around making sure that all of the information we have around our risk appetite, how that is reflected in the IGB and decision making, but also how it interacts with all of the other policies, processes, guidance documents we have. It is really important, and I think having that look across, David, is really important. So glad that that's the place we're in. So happy to note. Lots of notes. Okay, good. Okay, and then we move on to the duty of candour annual report, and that's Lisa.
Hi, just to present the duty of candour report that's expected from the HCSSA annually by the Care Inspectorate. It's just got a bit of guidance there of what the duty of candour is, what's expected from us. There's nothing to report on the duty of candour this year for the HCSSA, but we are just bringing our report in line with children's services. Previously, our report would come through the chief officers, but children's services done a separate report. So we're doing 2 separate reports, and then the chief officer's report will bring both of them together for adult and children's services. And probably the other bit just to note on it is that we're going to do a good bit of push of training for adult services around duty of candour. I don't think it's one of the areas that's quite as highlighted as it is in health. So I think a good bit of work on that is planned for this year. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Lisa. I think that's helpful. And I guess being in a place where we're not reporting anything, that's a good place to be. But as you said, I think that reinforcing training so that people are reporting when they need to be reporting is helpful. And we have lots of staff who are busy people with busy lives who might, and also, you know, I suppose different degrees of tolerance of issues and those sorts of things, and we just need to make sure our reporting's accurate, although I'm sure they're all doing the very best they can. Jamie?
Yeah, thank you. A great place to be, so long as nobody's wandering around thinking what happened to me when I was in their care. So I think for me, this might be a kind of, one, I wanted to check, is that quite normal, actually? Because I'm thinking if you're in a hospital, much more reason for things to happen that might require things to go to a duty of candour space and that kind of thing. So I kind of wonder to what degree it's a reflection of the type of care, the quality of care, the standard of care, the way that relationships work as well. So I think I just have a really basic question around it. Is that normal to not have anything to report, and we kind of like feel comforted that that is because there hasn't been anything that has required it to be reported?
As confident as comfortable as I can be with it, Jamie, and the information that's came forward. When there is incidents, we still take them up, we still escalate them, we do timelines around them, we look at them at service level, we look at the senior manager level, and actually we're just developing another policy for single agency, just to make sure that's a bit more robust, a bit like your SARES and layers, so they're discussed within the same format. So that would really pull out any areas, and it wouldn't be a single manager's decision or a single service decision. So we're really looking at our quality and our assurance around that. So that's in the process of being signed off in our operational procedures, and that should be implemented moving forward as well. So that gives us even more confidence and reassurance as we start to move forward.
Thanks. Jamie's nodding, so I think he thinks that's an unacceptable response, Lisa. And actually, thank you for asking the question, Jamie, because we've got additional information there around what's going on in the background. So that's really helpful. Okay, so are we happy to note the report? Okay, and then we move on to the Health and Care Staffing Scotland Act implementation, assurance and reporting in its health. And in place of Fiona, we have Joanne presenting today.
Hi everyone, I'm Joanne Byrne, I'm the Children's Services Manager here to present the report here for in behalf of Fiona Ralph, the Chief Nurse. So I'm asking the IGB just to note the content of the report, please, and I'm acknowledging everyone will have read the report, but there's a few areas just I would like to highlight, some key points within it, such as in section 4, the key duties of the Act are limited to a small number of services that are listed there currently, and it is a vision that all health services will move in the future to take this forward. As well as noting just that the outputs from the tool runs are at odds with what we're able to achieve with our financial constraints, and also the input to the tools can differ across the services, and that does require further development. That is acknowledged board-wide, and there is elements in place to improve that, and we have seen improvements each year. And just lastly there to highlight in table 4, the assurance table. So the status of our assurance to meet the Act in Renfrewshire. So the areas and services that you can see there in amber, there is currently work there to show that for these services and ongoing to develop and further improve. Fiona and Pauline both meet with the teams on a monthly basis, and at the time of reporting, the testing was not robust enough to move forward the assurance, but they do continue to develop, and we're hoping moving forward in the future that will change. The hospital at home that you can see is highlighted as in red. This is a new service that is developing, and we are confident the assurance will change positively as recruitment moves forward. And that's all the points. So happy to take any questions or comments, and hopefully I can answer them, or I can ask Fiona to bring that forward.
Thanks, Joanne. That's helpful and a good report, Kath.
Thanks, Chair. It's rock and roll here with whether my hand will get raised or not. So thank you for that. Brilliant. Thanks, Joanne. Thanks for a really concise summary of what is a very detailed paper. And you've answered my first question around how can we move from red in the hospital at home service. So thank you for that assurance that it will be recruitment, and that you're confident that that will move from that. So thank you. My other point relates to page 38 at 7.5. And in terms of the common staffing methods reports that are indicated here, I'm just wondering when they are likely to be available. It says here that they're currently being compiled, and I appreciate when this paper was written, things might have moved on. Any update on that? Thank you.
I can only update from my own services and know that we are meeting in the next coming weeks to provide. There had been issues with some of the outputs in the Boxy reports, and that we were informed this week has now been resolved. So we're all now making time to meet to then take forward the next line of reports.
Thanks, Joanne. I see Lisa's put her hand up. Are you replying to this point, Lisa?
Yeah, it's just really to clarify that as well. Absolutely, as Joanne said, for her service area, but it has been an issue gathering the data across all the service areas. So it is a work in progress. So that is getting pulled together, and they're actively working on that, was the information I'd had from Fiona and Pauline around it.
Okay, thank you both. Thanks. That's my questions, Chair.
That's helpful. I'm not seeing any other questions. I think a really good and detailed report. And these reports are always kind of a moment in time, so we'll look at the forward development then. And I appreciate the reassurance around hospital at home that we're expecting that to change. It is a very new service. It's doing quite innovative things, so you would expect a level of, oh, well, not quite sure. But good to know that that will come back to us, and just appreciate the report. Okay, then we move on to the Health and Care Staff in Scotland Act report for social care, and that's Thomas.
Thanks, Chair. So likewise, this report's for noting. So relates to section 3.2 of the Health and Care Staffing Act, which is round about planning and securing of care services. So what that means is the procurement and then commissioning of our external partners. This is the second annual report that we'll be submitting. It's due to be published by the 30th of this month for the Scottish Government. I guess we'd be in the second report. The initial one was submitted last year, and the Scottish Government had committed to reviewing the reports that were submitted across the country and coming back with feedback. So the care inspectorate carried out that duty for them, and we've been engaging closely with them. Actually, our report from last year was well received in terms of the areas it covered and demonstrating assurance and compliance with the Act. Appendix 1 has got the full detail of the report. I won't go through it in full, but I think the kind of key areas that we would bring out at the point of procuring a service. There's multiple actions that are taken by the procurement team through that to demonstrate that providers that we commission are complying with the Act round about safe staffing. Then when the contract comes into being, that moves, the responsibility for that moves on to ourselves and contracts and commissioning, and through the contract monitoring processes that we've got in place. We're regularly keeping up with the providers' ability to comply with the Act. Multiple steps we've done since the commencement of the Act, so including putting in a section into the technical specifications for providers, and our own contract monitoring processes, which have been updated. There's only been 2 contracts within the year, which are eligible to that we need to report on. So that's organised, that's contracts that are that are registered with the Care Inspectorate. So section 1.1 in Appendix A has got the flexible framework for care at home and our alcohol and drug crisis outreach service. Beyond that, I think we've got substantial level of assurance, and we've highlighted a couple of risks towards the end of the document. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Thomas. A good and detailed report also. Do we have any questions or comments? Kath, your button's decided to work.
I know my fingers red hot. Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Thomas. Excellent report. I just want to go to Appendix 3 around the significant event report. And in a sense, Lisa, you covered this when we were discussing duty of candour, but just looking for assurance that there is read across to the SEERS and the layers process, you know, the significant adverse events and the local adverse events. And so just, I guess it might be the same comment that you've already made both, but it would be good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly from our perspective, Kath, there's good read across to the processes, including sales.
Lisa?
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thomas's team will take from the care homes and so forth, care providers will look at all the P&S, like the notifications. They will absolutely escalate them within the locality services. If we think that there's concerns or there's ASP, they'll be brought forward and they'll be taken forward as adult support protection. We also have a monthly collaborative meeting where we discuss the care homes and so forth, and if there's any concerns, and that's with Contracts Commission and locality services, our health colleagues, care home liaison. So we have a good conversation around each of the care homes, any concerns that we've got. Care Inspectorate is also part of that. So we maintained that from COVID times because we think it's a good way of escalation, early interventions or any early concerns or any common themes that we can get in and support early with that.
Thank you. Thanks both. I mean, and what I'm hearing from that is we talk about person-centred care, but that's what the outcome is, isn't it, of the infrastructures and the checks and balances we have. And ultimately, that's what it's about. So thank you. Thanks both.
Thanks, Kath, appreciated, and thank you for the report, Thomas. I think these are really meaty reports in terms of what we're reporting back, in terms of how we are doing all the work we need to do in terms of to support people. So it is, and that assurance is very, very important, and there's a lot of work that underpins it again. So thanks everyone for the work. We then move on to the Mental Welfare Commission visit to Ward 39 at the RAH, which is a lovely report actually in terms of all the work that has been done to deliver real person-centred care and a real quality of life for people who are who are being supported by the service. And I'll stop talking and let Jason talk about the great work his team is doing. Jason.
Thanks very much, Lisa. So the report provides a summary of the Mental Welfare Commission announced visit to Ward 39 in the RAH on the 11th of February. And overall, the visit was very positive, with no recommendations for improvement, which provides us with a strong assurance regarding the quality of care being provided within the ward. Feedback from patients and relatives was very positive again. Staff were described as friendly, welcoming and supportive. And there was a particular recognition of the encouragement given to patients to promote independence and recovery. And strengths were also highlighted in relation to person-centred care planning, multidisciplinary processes, involvement of relatives, compliance with legal requirements, and access to a good range of therapeutic and recreational activities. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Jason. Do we have any questions or comments? Jacqueline?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Jason. Yeah, it was a really, really positive report and well done to the staff. I suppose I'm just stating the obvious here. I think they're doing a great job despite, you know, the point that was made about the surroundings, because it's really, really old and tired. And I've had reason to visit the ward in the past, and that was many years ago. So I know it's under review, but it's been under review for some time. So hopefully we can move forward with that, because the staff are doing a brilliant job, and what, you know, they could do an even better job if they had, you know, the tools and the, you know, the accommodation that was more appropriate. But that's been a long time coming, as you know. But yeah, well done, great report. Thanks.
Jacqueline. Jamie.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. I don't know what else you would want an inspection to say about a service and about the care, and I think the quotes from families as well, or someone going, they accepted me as I am. It's like, okay. There's one wee thing, and if I don't ask it, I'll go away and think, that's still rattling about with me, but it's probably not that important. What were they trying to tell me by telling me that there's a security control door with a code and the code is displayed right next to the thing, and then making no recommendations? If I use my imagination, I'm thinking probably somebody who is in that ward might not have the wherewithal to look at the code, type it in, get out without somebody, but they might have the wherewithal to burst through the doors. So it isn't there. But so I was kind of, what are they trying to tell me by putting this in and not saying anything about it?
Yeah, so there are very strict guidance in relation to locked doors in mental health wards. We none of our wards in Renfrewshire are locked wards. We have to provide some form of ability for patients and staff to leave the ward. The reason that we have a door that locks but has a code beside it is, as you said, so it's for those patients who may have issues with confusion, where a risk might come to come with the patient actually leaving the ward. So that little bit of time gives staff the ability to actually guide the patient away from that door. And so that's the reason that they put it in there.
Thanks, Jason. There's a bit of me like Jamie that thinks they could have said that, but you know,
it's a wee bit. It felt a wee bit like naughty of them or something to put that in there and make it sound like obviously this is ridiculous, but it's not because of that context. So yeah, that was the only. That's on them. That's not on the service or what's happening there. It was just like a wee dinging bit within it.
Thanks, Jamie. Lisa, you had a hand up there and it's gone.
Yeah, it's fine. Jamie just answered it back as well.
Perfect. Okay, so are we happy to note the report and also ask that Jason goes back to the team and says thank you to them for the excellent work they're doing? Very proud. I hope you all are, you know, you spend your life making people who are in difficult circumstances lives better, and that's a very, very positive thing, and it's what we're all here to do. So lovely. I think it's when we get reports all this positive, I'm always like a wee bit teary. It's very nice that we are at the point where we can say we're supporting people in this way. So it's appreciated. Okay, and then we move on to the annual report, and it says it's a report by chair, but actually James has done all the work to pull this together. So James, I'm just going to get you to do the highlights. I'm not going to take credit for a big report that you've written.
Thanks very much for that, Chair. So that is kind of title, it gives a kind of a fair kind of reflection of the work of the committee and the kind of key items of business that have been considered over the year. And it's the second such report that we've developed just to kind of give that overall assurance and visibility of the work of the committee. So as part of our wider kind of corporate governance arrangements and year-end processes, we will put it forward to the IJB at the meeting next week for kind of final agreement. But I'm happy to take any kind of specific questions on it if there are any.
Thanks, James. And I would welcome any comments from members just on the work we've done over the year. I think there's been lots of development. I think, you know, doing self-assessment and things like that has been really important. So if anyone's got any thoughts, very much welcome them. Billy.
Yeah, thanks. I thought I'd leave some comment till the end. I suppose people have already made comment about the quality of the reports that are coming to this meeting, some of the really positive work that's within those reports, and then I think this report really does summarise the sort of work of this group. And I'm not sure I can call myself a new chief officer anymore 10 months in, but my observation of being part of this group over the last 12 months, essentially, it's a really good group in terms of the work that's been done, the work that's been overseen, the rigour, the quality of the papers, and just want to thank my team and their teams for all of the work. I know that members have made that comment about several individual papers, but I just wanted to make that observation, and I think this paper really summarises the breadth and depth of work that colleagues are involved in. Karen, your team, obviously, a big part of that as well. So just wanted to offer my thanks as the newish, well, no longer new chief officer. Thanks.
Thanks. Billy, that's appreciated. I'm not seeing any further. Oh, Kath. Yep.
Thanks, Chair. I'm getting a message saying that I've got poor network connection, so apologies when there's a little bit of a lag. Yeah, you can't say you're new anymore, Billy. I would agree. You're in with the bricks now. Yeah, great paper, comprehensive, detailed, and I just wanted to bring the committee's attention to page 225, where there is an action around private meetings between ARC's membership and internal auditor to be arranged, and we've done that today, and that will continue, and that's a really important space for us to have as committee members, to meet with Karen and raise any issues. So we've done that, and that's already actioned. So thanks to everyone. Great report. Thank you.
Thanks, Kath. Okay, so we're happy to approve the report to go to the IJB. Okay, excellent. What I'm going to do now is, hopefully everyone's staying for training, but what I'm going to do now is just, can we just note the dates of the next meetings, the proposed dates. James, where are we with that? Is it James or is it Elaine?
I can jump in briefly. So I think the paper is attached just for agreement now on the proposed set of dates. So we've got nothing scheduled beyond today. So it's just for consideration and approval today if members are content to do that.
Okay. And are members happy with them as written? Excellent. Okay, so we can approve them, and it's now time for training. And given we are having cyber security training, I am assuming that we are stopping the recording.
I hadn't thought about that because normally the trainings are recorded, and that's how the other IGIB members
that's
training.
interesting.
But
Elaine, I'm just thinking because it's cyber security, if there's anything that we don't want in the public domain, can we pause, and then I guess we can offer the IGIB members training if they feel it's needed. I don't want officers to say something in the public domain that we don't want said in terms of the security of the organisation. So I think we probably don't record at this time.
Okay.
I also hadn't thought about it.
As Vice Chair, I would support that we don't.